What real estate investing strategy is best? Today, we are going to rank all of these different real estate investing strategies based on a few factors. First, the amount of money that's needed usually to get started with this one, because the more money something needs, the harder it is for beginners. The less money, the easier it is for beginners, so that's important. Second is profitability, meaning the short-term profitability, but also long-term profitability. How diversified is that income? Is it low-taxed income? Third is scalability. How does it help you get to your goals faster? How scalable is this process? Beginner friendly. Is it risky to do? Is it well documented? And is it passive or active? Meaning, is the time required high or is it low to keep it going? First up, we have Airbnb. Airbnb is when you rent a property out on the short-term basis for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, usually typically less than a month. Now, in terms of profitability, in the short term and the long term, it tends to have really good profitability, and there's a lot of tax benefits to it, especially one that's known as making you a qualified real estate professional. If the average rental for your property is less than 7 days, then you can become a qualified real estate professional on the property, which means you'll be able to deduct active losses. This is my understanding of it. I haven't done this yet. Active losses off of your income. Allows your income to become a lot less taxed, which is great. So also scalability, I would say it's not the best scalability wise because Airbnbs typically cost a little bit more and therefore it will slow down your ability to be scalable. But if you combine that with the BRRRR strategy, you might be able to get a little bit extra scalability out of it. Is it beginner friendly, well documented, risky to do? I would say Airbnb is decently beginner friendly compared to some other strategies. There's a lot of beginners that for their first property, they get an Airbnb. And then passive or active, I would say it's more active than it is passive compared to long-term rentals, but is more passive than fix and flip or wholesaling is. And so based on all of that, I think I'm going to go A, given the fact that it has decent profitability, it can be scalable, it is beginner friendly, and it is somewhere in between passive and active. Next up is the BRRRR strategy. The BRRRR strategy stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Is when you buy a property for cheaper, you fix it up, then you rent it out. Usually you buy it with a hard money loan. Instead of flipping the property like you would, you rent it out and you refinance it. Now, in terms of scalability, this is the most scalable method possible. You can actually combine BRRRR with a few other strategies to make them more scalable. So scalability-wise, great. Beginner-friendly, while it is well documented, I would argue that this is not a beginner-friendly strategy. Why? Because the BRRRR strategy is combining rentals and flipping together in the same one. And so it becomes very overwhelming and very hard to do. Not only that, you have to spend a lot more time finding deals, which makes the BRRRR strategy extremely difficult for beginners. Profitability wise, in the short term and the long term, this can be a pretty good strategy. Passive and active, it starts off very active and then turns very passive down the line. Because of this, I will put this in the A area. If you're a beginner, then it's an A, but if you're past the beginner stage, I highly recommend you do the BRRRR strategy because it is a very S tier investing strategy. Next up is fix and flip. This is when you buy a property, fix it up, and flip it. Now, for a beginner, a lot of times it's a little bit harder to get a hard money loan. You might need more money to do so. It's also a little bit more complex because you don't know how to fix things up. And so it might not be that beginner friendly, is more active, but profitability is high. It's not very scalable either in some senses. In some senses it is. So I'm going to put fix and flip in the C tier for a beginner, especially because most beginners come in with not that much contracting experience. If you have contracting experience, the fix and flip could be a higher tier like A, but because most beginners do not have that kind of level of work or capital to keep funding them to do more deals, fix and flip to me is not that beginner friendly. Hourly rentals. Hourly rentals are when you rent things out in like places like Peerspace, where you might rent a room for an office or an event. Hourly rentals are not an area that is very well documented that a lot of people have a lot of strategies on. So beginner friendly wise, I would not really recommend it. It is going to be more active, especially more active than Airbnb. Scalability wise, it's harder to get loans for hourly rentals only because there's not a lot of lenders that will lend on hourly rentals. So I would consider that to be not that good either. But profitability wise, if you find a good niche, it can be extremely profitable. So for beginners, I'm going to put hourly rentals in the D tier, mainly because everything except profitability is not that high. And as a beginner, profitability is not the thing you should be worried about the most because you're in this for the long term. House hacking. Again, this is from the perspective of a beginner. House hacking is when you buy a duplex, quadplex, or triplex, live in one of the units and rent out the other ones. And typically what this allows you to do is to live for cheaper than you would if you were to rent in your area or if you were to buy a single family house, because you'll have renters help offset your income, which can help you qualify for more property than you would have been able to before. And on top of that, you have the ability to put 3.5 3.5% down, sometimes even less when you're buying a multifamily home doing house hacking. And so for a beginner, I'm putting this in the S tier. It's a great way to get experience. It's a great way to get started investing. So many people start investing with house hacking. And so if you live in a market where house hacking is doable or you're open to moving, I would highly recommend house hacking. Land flipping. Land flipping is when you're buying land in an area where population is growing significantly, and so you're holding on to it, hoping it appreciates. Now, in terms of profitability, this is mostly based off of the market, which you don't control. And so while it can have the ability to be very profitable, it can also have the ability to not be very profitable at all. It's also not very scalable because you typically have to buy land and you are not improving the value of it, which you're not being able to refinance anything out usually. Beginner friendly, it's not as documented as buying houses is, but I wouldn't consider it the least documented thing out there. And in terms of passive or active, it's a pretty passive strategy, even though it's flipping. You're just holding on to the land and waiting. So for beginners, I would consider this a D strategy. It's definitely worse than fix and flip, especially because you can't control the market. Next up is lending or investing with others. Now, for those of you that are new here, I started a company called House Hack Helpers where you guys can invest in deals with us where we're buying small multifamily homes like duplexes, triplexes, quads, fixing them up and flipping them to people. And you can invest in the individual deals and make a return when we flip them and we make the profit. This is, for a beginner, in my opinion, one of the best strategies. Why? Because I'm going to argue if you do it with us, and I'm 100% biased, you can call me out in the comments. If you do it with us, it's S tier. Why? Because we are teaching you guys as we're doing it. Every week we give you guys updates on what's happening in the properties. We're telling you how we're dealing with the tenants, how we're dealing with contractors, the rehab budgets that we're looking at. We're showing you how we analyze the property. So it's a great way for you to learn while also earning from the property when we're successful. I can't say how it is with everyone, and so how it might be with other people, you might just be completely passive, which then it might be an A strategy because you don't learn anything from it. Profitability is lower than if you were to do this yourself, 100%, if you do everything right. But scalability is high because you can keep investing in multiple deals across multiple people, and that will be very diversified as well. It's very beginner friendly because you don't have to do much work. The only thing you should be doing as a beginner is vetting the deal yourself and vetting the person behind the deal. So I'm going to put this in the S tier for beginners as a way to get experience if you're doing it with us. Next in is live in flip. Live in flip is kind of like house hacking, but instead of getting tenants, you fix up the property while you live there and then you flip and move out. For beginners, this is an S tier strategy. Why? It is more active than passive, right? Because you're going to be living in a house while things are getting fixed up and you're going to be managed contractors. But in terms of scalability, in terms of profitability, this strategy is probably the most profitable for beginners because you can get into a house again for 3.5% down with an FHA 203K loan, fix up the property, and then you now do not pay capital gains tax on the first $250,000 due to Section 121 home exclusion. If you live in the property for 2 years and you hold on to it for 5 and you flip it later, you pay no capital gains tax on that. And so you can get a tax-free flip, which increases the profitability through the roof while having a place to live, learning a lot about real estate investing, and seeing it with your own bare hands because you're living in the property, all for a little money down. To me, it is a very S-tier strategy. Next up are long-term rentals. This is what I focus on. Long-term rentals where you're finding a property on Zillow and you are making offers and you get one and you rent it out for a year. That's a long-term rental. You get a property management company to help you. Now, in terms of passiveness, it can be more passive with property management. It can be more active without. In terms of beginner friendly, this is the most well-documented. Like, this is everything that I've done on my page is all about this. And there's plenty of other pages that talk about long-term rentals. And then scalability, it is not as scalable because you have to put 25% down normally, and then you have to wait to get the next property. But it is more profitable and it is diversified income all within one property, usually, and it's lower tax compared to a lot of the flipping strategies that we talked about. And so I might put it at the top of A tier, like with the edge of S tier. Next up is luxury home flipping. This is basically when you flip houses that are on the higher end of the market, like $1 million plus homes. Now, while the profitability can be extremely high because you can get one of these older homes that looks like crap for very discounted and then put in $100,000, $200,000 of work and get it to like 1.5 million. That is a possibility in some areas. If you're doing that, that can be great profitability. But that is not beginner friendly because you're probably dealing with foundation issues. You're probably dealing with a new roof. You're probably dealing with a new plumbing system. You're dealing with a lot of issues. And so it's very active. It is not beginner friendly at all. It is scalable because if you make a lot of money from the deal, you can then flip into the next one. For beginners, I'm going to put this in the C tier category. Next thing are medium-term rentals. Medium-term rentals are when you rent out anything longer than 30 days, but shorter than a year, usually. Think like travel nurses, students, that kind of thing, military members. It's harder to gauge gauge the demand for something like this than long-term rental. So it's not as well documented. It's not as beginner friendly in that sense. It is a little bit more active than long-term rentals, but less active than short-term rentals. You also need to furnish the property usually, and it's not as scalable. It's just like the same as long-term rentals. And so because of the fact that it's not as documented and a little bit more work, I'm going to put this in the B tier. Next up is new construction flipping. This is when you buy some land, you build a house on it, and then you flip it. In my opinion, this is easier than fix and flip and luxury home flipping because you're building from a plan. You have a builder who builds the house. Now, technically, yes, there's more things that are involved in a new construction flip, but there's less to mess up because you're building the house from scratch. It's not like when you buy a house and you knock down the wall and there's mold behind it, and then you have a lot more issues, or you found out that the foundation is actually really bad. And so I'm going to put this in the B tier. Next up is rent by the room rentals. This is when you rent things by the room. So if let's say you have a 4-bedroom house, this is a popular strategy in Austin. My friend Victor did it a lot. You have a lease for each individual bedroom. So instead of having one big lease for the house where you might be able to rent a 4-bedroom house for $2,500, you rent out each bedroom for $800, let's say, and now you have $3,200. So in terms of profitability, it's higher profitability than long-term rentals, usually somewhere around medium-term rental profitability. Scalability wise, it is just as scalable as a long-term rental. Beginner friendly, it is less beginner friendly than long-term rentals, and it is a little bit more active because you're managing 4 leases in one property. And so I'm going to put this in the B tier. Rental arbitrage. Rental arbitrage is typically when you get a long-term rental, you sign the lease by convincing the landlord that you are going to turn the property on Airbnb, and you make the profit difference between the Airbnb income and the long-term rental income. This is great in terms of scalability because you don't need to buy properties to get there. But in terms of profitability, you lose out on appreciation and a lot of tax benefits that you would get if you bought the property yourself. It is more active than it is passive. In terms of beginner friendly, it is a little bit less risky to do because you usually have a little bit less money involved, but you're also signing up for a lease without necessarily knowing all the demand for a property. And so I'm going to go with it is a C tier. Next up is turnkey rentals. This is when you buy a property that has already been fixed up. They'll sell you the property directly to an investor like you. But here's the con is that usually because they fixed it up and they're managing it, you have less profitability than you would have if you found the deal yourself. It is more passive than a regular long-term rental because you're buying a property that's already fixed up. And so those two things kind of balance each other out. It is a little bit less scalable as well because there's no opportunity to increase the value. But is it more beginner friendly? Yes, because you have less issues. So I would consider this basically exactly the same as long-term rentals here. Wholesaling, on the other hand, you don't end up owning a property. This is when you find a deal, you find someone who wants to sell their house. And instead of buying the property yourself, let's say you get the seller to agree to sell it for $100,000, and you find someone else, like an investor like me, who wants to fix and flip the property or turn it into a rental, and we buy it then for 110. At 110, I can fix it up and then flip it. Wholesalers make the difference between the two. Their job is to find deals. In terms of scalability, it is scalable in some senses, depending on what kind of marketing you do. A lot of people do different forms of marketing, like postcards. That would be a thing that's more scalable because it's not as much time involved. But if you're doing cold calling, that's not very scalable. Beginner friendly, I would consider this not that beginner friendly because if you don't know what it's like to be an investor, it's hard to be a good wholesaler. And it is very active, but has a lot of profitability in the short term, not that much in the long term. And so for beginners, I'm personally going to put this in the C tier strategy. And wholetailing is basically wholesaling, but you're doing a little bit of extra work. Once you get the property, a lot of times you trash it out, or you might do some light rehab, deal with some small things just to make the property a little bit more sellable and increase the value a little bit more. I would consider this a D tier strategy for beginners because not only do you have to do all the cons of wholesaling, but you also have to do some of the cons of fix and flip together. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are in the comments below. Do you guys agree with my assessment? Where am I wrong? I'm happy to listen to your guys' opinion on what you think is a better strategy or worse strategy. Remember, this is from the perspective of a beginner. And if you would like to join my free course and community, you could join with the link below. You can come ask questions. We have calls every 2 weeks, and I'll see you all in there. Thank you. Have a great day.